All right, so we've been speaking about souls and how sometimes the purest of souls come into the lowliest of families, and sometimes the lowliest of souls come into the greatest of families. And there is not much we can do specifically about those types of happenings because that's God's domain. God decides where He sends which soul. Um, Now, we see that in Jewish history, there have been very high souls that have been sent to lowly places, and vice versa too, which again proves this point. Um, this idea is all this is in the context of chapter 18, which, by the way, as we've mentioned, I think it is purposeful that this content is in chapter 18. 18 is Chai, as we all know, as it is purposeful that the chapter about love is chapter 32, because 32 in Hebrew has the numerical value of lev, which means heart. But this chapter 18 really speaks about souls, and most importantly, how to uh, ignite that soul through chokhmah, as we spoke about, through that state of being in a constant state of learning, of knowing that you do not know. And it speaks about how to access it also not just in ourselves, but in others, how to ignite it in others by not being stuck by the status of the person, which is what we're speaking about now, but rather seeing the giant soul, even though the surroundings might be quite lowly. So that's the idea here. Let's continue. Top of page 105, where we left off. Does anyone want to read? Anyone?
I'll read, Rabbi.
Oh,
Oh,
please,
good.
Jordan, go for it.
Um, about the arousal of forces exceeding an individual Jew's intellectual and emotional capacity, the author explains that a certain type of connection between the Jew and God is independent of a person's specific level and cognitive ability,
Mhm.
an essential link passed down from the patriarchs to their children and children's children to this very day makes possible the unique relationship to God of these descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Its arousal can come at any time, whether by sacrificing oneself to sanctify God's name or in the unexpected entrance of a new and holy soul that transcends its direct lineage.
Right.
As
Good.
as mentioned, the focal point of this sanctity is in the soul's chokmah. The author now explains what this chokmah is, what its function among the soul's other powers is, and why specifically the light of the Ein Sof clothes itself there.
Right. So there are many factors that influence us. We all know just from the world that nature sometimes influences us, nurture influences us certainly. But what this paragraph right here is saying is that when we peel all of these layers of influences, some internal and some external, we see that there is one constant, and that is the Ein Sof, God's infinite light that shines within each and every one of us. God's infinite light that is passed down from generation to generation, began with Abraham and Sarah and went down to Isaac and Rebekah and so on. That is not is not left to any influence, to any outside or external or internal factor. That always exists. The big question is how do we access it, right? How can we really access that Ein Sof to feel that we are indeed internally and unbreakably connected to God? Now, and that again is beyond any influence, any type of influence. I'm reminded Rabbi Steinsaltz once shared the story of how there was a professor, he gave a Talmudic class every week at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And there was a professor at first who refused to go because he told Rabbi Steinsaltz, everything you believe in, I don't believe in. And Rabbi Steinsaltz would never be fazed by sentences like this. But one day he sees that he came and he asked him, why now? What happened? And this professor told him that the Yom Kippur War had just happened. And his son, who's also very anti-religious like him, was in the battlefields of Lebanon and he got severely injured and he was left bleeding alone. And he knew that he had about an hour to live with all the bleeding that was happening. And if no one would come, he would just die. So he said to himself, during that hour, let me start thinking of some soothing thoughts so that I can at least die in peace. And he started thinking about Shakespeare, about Aristotle, about all these other lofty thought, thinking thinkers and what they taught. Then he started thinking about some, novels. I don't know, you name them. I don't know exactly what he told Rabbi Steinsaltz. But he said that none of them, wherever his mind went, none of them brought him the comfort that he was seeking as he was dying. And then one thought came to mind. He thought about how his grandfather, who was still a religious man, would walk him to synagogue each and every Shabbat and sing to him some songs, tell him some stories. And that brought him the greatest of comfort. And then miraculously, a medic came, found him, attended to his wounds, and literally saved his life. But the professor now tells Rabbi Steinsaltz, you see, I thought that our anchor, that what would give us indeed this sense of connection is all these external things. I was wrong. So I came to learn about what my grandfather was hooked on, because it seems to be that magical thing. And in many ways, I think that's when you peel off all these layers, even good layers. I'm not saying Aristotle and who else did I say? Shakespeare. I'm not saying they're bad, but at the end of the day, there's a connection that is beyond any type of alteration of influence. It's a connection that is embedded within us, that is really us, that is a part of our DNA, of our strongest DNA. And that doesn't that exists by everyone, whether you feel like you're a lowly soul or you're a great soul. That same connection is everywhere and in everyone. Now, how do you access it? Through Chokhmah, as the Tanya is about to teach. But it's important to note, and I think that, by the way, is very much connected to Passover, because as the Kabbalists teach, really, we didn't quite deserve the grand exodus. We were immersed, as the Kabbalists say, in the 49 gates of impurity. There are 50 gates of impurity according to Kabbalah. We were immersed in 49 of them. When you're immersed in the 50th one, that's it. That's when there's almost no bearing a transformative event. There's almost no, very hard to get out of it. But we were immersed in those gates of impurity. Now, what enabled us really to come out? It was really this ability to say that we are going to function on a metaphysical level, on a level that expresses that ultimate connection that we have with the Ein Sof, with the infinite light. When did we do that? When we took the sheep that God had commanded us to take and sacrificed it, and first kept it for 3 days and then sacrificed it. Now, the sheep was the god of the Egyptians, but when we showed that level of complete self-sacrifice, knowing that we might be killed just for taking the god of the Egyptians and slaughtering it, that's when God said, okay, you've accessed that Ein Sof. Now you can come out of those 49 gates of impurity. Now you're free. When you're free from within, then I can make sure that you'll be free from without too. And many ways, that's what we try to do every year on Passover, to access that Ein Sof that doesn't get contaminated or influenced by anything. Anyhow, welcome questions, comments, disagreements, and so on. Otherwise, we can continue. Okay, let's continue. Middle of page 105.
Now, Chachma, wisdom, is the source of intelligence and comprehension, and it is above Bina, understanding, which is intellectual understanding and comprehension, whereas Chachma is above them and their source. Chachma is not synonymous with intellect. What we recognize as intellectual comprehension and understanding is Bina, understanding, whereas Chachma is the source and dynamic that creates intellect. Chokmah acts as the bridge from a non-conceptualized idea into active intelligence, our perception of the concept.
Mhm.
Thought is the process of combination and fusion, of analysis and differentiation. Yet this process can begin only when there is a particular idea for thought to engage, to take apart and reconstruct. The stage at which the idea first appears, before intellect can start to work on it, is Chokmah, preceding Bina and intellectual comprehension. Our thoughts usually unfold so quickly that we miss the chance to both think and meditate on them. We fail to discern their rich layering. Only when the process slows for whatever reason are we able to distinguish between the stage at which an idea first appears in Chokmah and the subsequent analysis and conceptual reorganization in Bina.
I want to pause you there because I think this is one of the most the tremendous analysis that defines Chokhmah and defines Bina. You know, we sometimes interchange those two words. Chokhmah here he translates as wisdom, and Bina definitely is translated as understanding. The difference between wisdom, there's a tremendous difference between wisdom and understanding. And here Rabbi Steinsaltz goes to the very core. And if you think about it this way, to access Chokhmah, you need complete selflessness. You need to be in a state of nullification. To access Bina, you need a little bit of the opposite. Then you need to bring in your own mind and analyze and think for yourself. Chokhmah is accessed particularly because you have no ego, as we've spoken about a lot in this chapter, where we say that I am in a constant state of learning. I know that I don't know, and therefore I'm waiting for God to illuminate my mind, to give me that insight. Chokhmah is when I'm just a recipient. I'm just a sponge right now. I just want to receive that which God is pouring upon me. Bina is then going back with a different wheel, with a whole different side of the mind almost, and going back to that wisdom that you received to analyze it, to understand it. That's why Bina means understanding, to try and figure out what's wrong, what's right, how to filter that massive light that you just received, where to filter it, and so on and so forth. So it's really two wheels, so to speak, of the mind. One is a wheel of selflessness that only absorbs, and the other one is a wheel actually of a little bit of the I, the ego, not necessarily the ego, but of the me trying to understand what I just received. That's the difference between the two. Now, a lot of people, when they study, they're already using Bina. They're already using understanding. They're already thinking to themselves, okay, what do I think about what I just studied? Well, to be able to have access to Chokhmah, you can't study like that. You have to put yourself aside. Sometimes it takes days until you can activate Bina because your Chokhmah hasn't been received completely yet. Just allow it, again, like a sponge, allow it to be soaked, allow it to catch every drop of water, so to speak, if we're using the analogy of a sponge. After you've made sure that everything has been soaked, then you can start to analyze it. But if you imagine a sponge already activating itself and someone pressing on it as it's still receiving, you've missed the point of a sponge altogether. Same here with the mind. You have to have chokhmah and you have to have complete selflessness, complete humility. Let it sit. And then after a day or two or three, then you can go back and say, all right, now that I've absorbed it all, let me analyze it. Let me use my Bina. That's the ultimate way to learn. That is why also, it's interesting, but Maimonides speaks about this a lot. And the Talmud also speaks about how the Bet Midrash, the house of study, was designed. In the times of the Talmud, in the times of the Sanhedrin, it's interesting because you had the rabbis sitting at the head of a table, which was a semicircle, and you had benches of students in front of them. And, the head rabbi was in the middle of the semicircle, and based on your wisdom or your level, you were seated next to him or further from him. And the benches that were in front of that semicircle were benches of students. But again, based on your level, you were either, if you were on a higher level, you were either closer to the rabbis or further than the rabbis. Now, the right to question, you may think it's almost like a dictatorship, but there's this idea in mind. The right to question the rabbis when they were teaching first went to the rabbis themselves. They didn't have any questions. Then they went to the first bench, then to the second bench, and then the people at the very back at the last right to question. You may say, well, it's not fair. But when you think about what we just said, then it makes a lot of sense. Because what is the difference between a good student or student that deserves to be in the first bench, student that is at the back bench? The difference is the ability to absorb the teachings of the rabbis in the semicircle. The definition of not such a good student that is sitting in the back is someone who doesn't have his first wheel completely polished yet. He does not absorb yet. So we say to him, hey, before you question, go to the back. Just listen in. Your task is not to question now. Your task is just to listen, listen, and listen. And once it's made all the rounds, and now you've used that time to really activate your first wheel, to just listen, to be in the state of chokhmah, then we're going to ask you to activate your bina. The rabbis could use those wheels much quicker. They were more polished, and therefore they could question quicker. But if you don't have your first wheel polished and well working, then you really can't study. That was the idea behind this design, which, by the way, was archaeologically proven. Also, I've been to the village of Katrin in the Golan. Maybe some of you have been there, right? Where they found a whole Talmudic village.
Yes.
And you see those benches, you see some of the design left. So that's really the way it was. Now, again, not to punish the bad student or anything, but again, to allow him to access his first wheel before going to the second wheel.
Einstein famously said imagination is more important than knowledge.
That's right. Very, very good. Exactly. It's so true. But imagination can only come from the state of nullification, right? When you nullify yourself to God, to His creation, that's chokhmah. So chokhmah is in many ways so much more important than bina. And really, bina is not bina if you don't have chokhmah before it. So you need that bitul, as they call it, nullification. Now, I'm going to add just one more thing, but I want to connect it to Passover since we're celebrating Passover as we speak. But in many ways, that's the difference between chametz and matzah, as they say. Chametz, leavened bread, and matzah, which is the bread that we eat, are spelt in the same way, almost the same way. They both have a mem, tzaddik. And then the difference between matzah and chametz in the wording is that matzah has a hey, while chametz has a chet, which is almost the same letter. Chet is, a U shape, while a hey is a U shape too, just with an opening at the top of one of the bars. And the Kabbalists explain that that's the difference between chametz and matzah. That's the essential difference. Chametz is inflated. It's the ego. And when you have this ego, you have zero ability to be open to imagination, like you were saying, to chokhmah. Your you is completely sealed. Matzah, which is the point of Passover, to be humble, like the matzah, because you can't be free if you're not humble, has that hey, not a chet, which means a little opening. And without an opening, you can't really grow. You can't really become free. You can't really journey to Mount Sinai where you receive the Torah. Because again, you're so sealed that you have only Bina. You have no Chokhmah. So the point of Passover is to create this opening, to get rid of the chametz by creating an opening so that we are as humble as the matzah and we are as open also as the matzah. And that is what really accesses Chokhmah which is far, far, far greater, infinitely greater than what Bina can ever access. Okay, good. I welcome other comments. Otherwise, we can continue here.
Rabbi, I just have a
Yes,
quick
please, Gary.
observation. In my own teaching, sometimes you get a student. I get students that are very smart. I teach at the Claremont colleges, and they're very at a high, lot smarter than I am.
Right.
I mean, this is music, not Torah, but sometimes you get the
I'm not sure
student.
they're on a higher level than you are, but go for it. Yeah.
I get a student, and it's you start. I mean, you see, this is an old soul. This is a soul that has been down this road before, and you're telling them something, and they just get it immediately, and there's no way they can have gotten it from what I said. How how does this? I mean, of course, this is yeah, how we can even answer this. That chokhmah, how much comes from like perhaps this Gilgal idea, and how much is it just a brilliant soul?
Right. That's a great question. You do see that immediately in students. But I think that if they are, how do you define an old soul? Because you see old souls in students. One of the, I think, key ingredients to an old soul is that selflessness, is that constant state of curiosity, of imagination, of being open. And I think that's why also they get it so much quicker than the others, because they have that chokhmah, that selflessness, that nullification. It helps the understanding, but it's the constant state of curiosity. You know, I saw that in students, but I certainly saw that in Rabbi Steinsaltz said, not just an old soul. The Lubavitcher Rebbe said that he had a great soul, and Neshama Gdola. But he was in this constant state of curiosity. He was always learning, always, whether it was opening a book that just laid there, or whether it was learning from children. I remember taking him to a preschool in Atlanta, and a child was having a banana for snacks. And Rabbi Steinsaltz says to the child, it's just to interact with him, but also it just shows his curiosity. He says, "Why do you think God created a banana with a peel when you throw away the peel anyway?" And I'm sure there are many answers to that. And then he told the child, "I'll tell you why." He, he asked the child to give him the peel of the banana, and then he drew something on it which matched the design of the peel of the banana. He said, "Maybe this is why," and he gave him back the the drawing on the peel. It's like, wow, why do you think of that? But that's because he's always asking himself. He's always curious. God, it's his creation. Even a peel of a banana is his creation, right? So I think that's one essential ingredient that every old soul, so to speak, has. And that's why also I think they much quicker, they get it much faster. Yeah.